My name is Ernesto Sanchez. I'm a Korean War veteran. I was born in Laredo, December the 4th, 1928. When I was little, uh, it was during the Depression. It was very hard. We almost starved to death. My parents came from Mexico. My father from northwest Spain came to Mexico. He lost his father and his mother in the space of 2 weeks, and he crossed the river and started in the fields when he was 6 years old. My mother came from very rich families in Mier, Tamaulipas. It's just south of Falcon Dam, and they were very rich. So they brought everything with them and came to Laredo and started 4 dairies. When my father and my mother got married, they gave my parents a dairy, and they started in 1933. And we had up to 300 milking cows. It was beautiful, and then my mother started a store. And when I was little, I used to deliver the milk, and I enjoyed it because I was the only boy, and I had 5 sisters. And I live in Laredo at the time of the Patron system, when there was one man, one family, like a kingdom. I was in No Man Hill, and we had more combat there because the Chinese was trying to get rid of our tanks. And by the way, the company commander of the tanks was George Patton, the son of the great hero of World War II. He was a captain. And he was so understanding, so friendly, and so good, except that his tank men didn't like us because we were very mean to them. Somebody would say, there's a target, there's a machine gun. And I said, let the tanks shoot 1 round. And when they shot 1 round, the tank will recoil. And when it recoiled, then we shoot three of our cannons. And by the time they shot the next round, we had already hit the mountain, and it became a landslide and covered the enemy. That was one of the tricks, and it kind of hurt me because you see those men, all of a sudden, you don't see anything but like when you have an avalanche, but this was with dirt. And then they called us back to rest, and I didn't like the system in the back because when we were with battalion, they were decorating the secretaries with bronze stars and all kind of medals. And I would tell them, aren't you ashamed? You don't even know where the front is. And they said, I'll be out of Korea, and who knows how I got it. So, and that got some of us upset. This was like World War I. I was there fighting for the mountain. That was our part. And we made trenches. And right in front, we put wires, fences, mines, wire, fences. And that was no man's land. And then way in the middle, there were trees and all that, and that was no man's land. Maybe there was a river. And then you went up to the other mountain, and that's where the Chinese had fences and mines. So the land between us and them is called no man's land. Nobody owned it. So that's what it is. And our patrols would walk through the trails, and some of theirs would walk through the trails. And if one of member of our patrol was to sleep, then in the morning you couldn't go get him because the Chinese already had gone to no man's land. And the best way to capture prisoners was when they went with the ladies to wash their clothes in the river. And then we would get the jets, the machine guns, and we tell them, one of our Koreans tell them to come this way, come this way, come this way. And eventually, 3 or 4 hours later, they were prisoners. They probably did it on purpose, but they were afraid to escape. My faith helped a lot, but what really turned me more to my faith, that I had a colored boy, and he would not get a rifle. He always had a Bible. And he would always, I said, look, brother, look, priest, this guy is giving me trouble. Let me talk to him. He would make them cry. And that's the way I controlled the color soldiers. But the color soldiers were good. I had a brother-in-law in the next division, in the 25th Division, that had when you lose your blood, hemorrhage fever, and we pray a lot for him. And I think if you pray, and the priest was always there, and he would set the jeep, and I would help him. So I was close to the sisters and to the priest. So it got I don't know, maybe I got too religious, but I never thought I would ever die there. I was busy trying to save my 78 men that I had. And from there, we went to the Iron Triangle. And one night, the Chinese attacked us with 135,000 soldiers. And they pushed the eight South Korean division back, but they sent the 40 and other divisions, and that was the biggest push that they ever had. They wanted to kick us out of Korea for the second time, but we held them there. We closed the gap, and we didn't lose any land. The triangle was 3 cities, very industrial cities in North Korea.
Do you recall which cities?
Huh?
Do you recall which cities?
Chorwon on the left, Kumwa on the right, and Pongyong on the. And it sounds almost like the capital, and many people get it mixed up, but it has a different spelling, and that was called the Iron Triangle. And that was the biggest battle we fought, the Iron Triangle. And then from there, I went to the Heartbreak Ridge. And everybody tell me, why do they call this mountain Heartbreak Ridge? I said, look, it's a little mountain, 7 miles long, or maybe 1 mile wide, 3,000 feet high, and then there the Chinese all surrounded us. They could even see the back, but the Americans had paid a big price for that little mountain. And if we would have lost it, it was on the way to Seoul. So it was the highway going to Seoul. So we would hold it at any time. By the way, it's unbelievable. 2 weeks before the war ended, well, the war never ended, but ceasefire, 2 of our men won the Congressional Medal of Honor there. They went on a patrol. I laughed because the way it happened. They went on a patrol and they slide down. They went all the way to the bottom, and while they were there, a lot of Chinese attacked them, and they killed so many. And that was the last 2 Congressional Medal of Honor from the 40th Infantry Division.
Do you recall their names?
No, I don't. I don't know the names, but I know those were the last 2, and it's engraved in my mind. Of the whole Korean War, those were the last 2. And then we moved back, and they sent us to Freedom Bridge, and we were guarding Freedom Bridge when they were changing the prisoners and all that. And it was quite a thing, all these ambulances taken one at a time and so on. And to me, it was quite a waste of, that area is called Dead Valley because there were so many tanks and material that were lost between the North Koreans, South Koreans, because it's on the way to Seoul.
You said Death Valley?
Death Valley, and it's and that's where they had the Peace Hut, but then they changed it to the new place. And then I came home. I was there in Korea 1 year, 1 day. I came home, and I decided to continue studying, and I got my degree. I went home to get a job.
And you used your GI Bill?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. But going back there, like, what was your thought whenever you arrived in South Korea? You know, how different was it from the culture that you had been brought up in, you were raised in? I mean, everything must have been different. Can you
What broke me more, way of thought, that when I got to Japan, it was another world. Everything was little. You could not fit in the buses and all that. And that was like a culture different than my culture. But I was stationed in Japan a little while, so when I got to Korea, it was just normal. It was just normal.
So what was your family's reaction to you being drafted? How did
Well,
they react to that?
well, when I was drafted, my mother said, "You're my only son. I go with you." I said, "Mother, you know better. You have to take care of Daddy and my sisters. But I love you a lot." Yes, mother, but I have to serve, and you have to stay. And uh, it made her more religious. Uh, when when I heard things, I would write her, and she said, "Don't worry, son. I went to the church or this or that, you know."
Right. Now, how was your living conditions?
When I landed in Incheon, we were in summer clothing, and it was freezing, almost froze to death. And then there they had a tent, and they gave us winter clothing. And then somebody said, who had ROTC? And I said, I went to A&M. So they gave me a platoon, and I had to go from Incheon to Seoul walking. And I thought, that's no good. So there were some tanks, and I got a rock, and I hit one of the tanks, and they stopped. I said, give me a ride. So I put my men, my 50 men or whatever it was, on top of the tanks. We went to Seoul, and then the guy said, we're going north, and you have to go east. So we got off, and as soon as we got off, there were some trucks, and they took us to Chuncheon. And Chuncheon was very small. It had been bombed and all that. It was just starting, but that was the headquarters of the 9 Corps, the 40th Division, the 25, and the 45 Division. So it was quite a great, big thing. And then when I came to take my NCO school, and I always know this in the Army, if you're the first one in the class, they advance you. So when I went to NCO school, all the guys went to Chuncheon. I stayed there and I read what was going to be taught the next day. And in every test, I got 100. And I was the number 1 man. And they gave me Sergeant First Class. And then they gave me a company of men there. And I had to wake them up, take them to class, like babies. So I told whoever was in charge of NCO school, I say, sir, I want to go to the front. I don't want to take care of babies. I don't want to babysit with all this. And he said, you're crazy. They're going to kill you over there. And I say, sir, I'll take my chances. And God was so good. I went to the front. And another thing, if I would have stayed back in Chuncheon as an NCO school, I probably would still be there because they were giving very few points.
How much were you getting paid for your service?
Okay. This is the thing. I'm a businessman. Okay. When I went into the Army, they were paying me about $87
A month?
a month, something like that. I kept 20, and I sent home the rest. But when I was in basic training, I noticed that all the GIs were dirty, you know, because they went on maneuvers and all that. So I decided to wash their clothes. A shirt, 25 cents, pants, 25 cents. I would buy some soap. I put 50 pants and 50 shirts, and I just put them like that. I rinse them, I put them there and hung them. In a few minutes, I had maybe 100 quarters or something like that. And the idea was to save that money, that when the GIs got paid and they went to play dice and they lost money, and if you ask me for a loan, I said, I'll give you $5 so you can recover your money, but you're going to pay me 10. And I went around loaning to this guy, and the ones that were winning were paying me double.
You're the banker.
Yes. So when they quit playing, I had all the money and they had none. Well, some. But I talked to the captain, and he said that I was doing a deed because during the month some of them were broke and they didn't have money for shaving or ice cream or something to go to the PX, and I loaned them money. When I was in Japan, I go to the PX and I buy $100 worth of things, send it to my mother, and she had a store and she would sell that. And then I would ask you, would you like to buy $100 for me and I give you $5? and they would send it to my aunt, and to my grandmother, and to my aunt, because you could only send $100 per soldier, but they send it to all my relatives, and then they give it to my mother, and she sold it, and the whole neighborhood had all kinds from Japan. So, okay, when I was in Korea, I told them, there you are, sad and everything. So I bought hundreds of transistor radios because the guys went on R&R to Japan, and they would bring them back, and I would give them a little bit, and I sold hundreds and hundreds of transistor radios. And I said, now you put it down because the enemy will catch you. And then I said, look, you're going to go home, and they think you're going to say lies. Why don't you buy these cameras for me, little cameras? And I sold the cameras and the rolls. So everywhere I went, I made a profit. When the war ended, I was at Heartbreak Ridge. And I remember that day very, very well. Captain George Patton told us not to dare fire our pistols, much less our recoilless, because he had a tank and I had my guns, and he said, you're going to bring fire. And it was a very funny day. Everybody was walking like they were dead. You know, we didn't know what to. And the cessation of fire, first, they threw a flare. And then they threw everything at us. We thought the war had started again. And then they had another flare, a red flare going on, and they stopped the firing. And then the GIs start firing at them. And then all of a sudden, everything stopped. And it was, I don't know, very funny. And I told the guys, don't go to the trenches. And while the Chinese were shooting at us, we lost one of our men. And I said, I told you not to go. But sir, okay, I said, if you want to go home, go right now to the front and let him kill you, and you go home in a casket. And that was bad for me to tell them, but the thing was, some of them stayed back. I was afraid somebody else might lose their life for nothing the last day. And then it really broke my heart that we had to move back after we fought for Heartbreak Ridge and had to give it up. But that's the way I believe that North Korea will never fight South Korea, because when I revisited Korea, here was our troops, there was the land, there were their troops, and behind of them, there were so many factories, and the trucks were going back and forth. So, you know, North Korea needs our business, or South Korea business. So all this thing that we're going to have a war, it's just for the guy to be in power, to stay in power, you see. What will stop all this? When finally one day South Korea will build more factories in North Korea, and then they would come like brothers. It might last another 100 or whatever, because their system is different than ours. We're free and they have their own system, so we might be there forever, but I don't think we'll have a war. So I don't see any way to have a peace treaty. I don't know. But you know how these people are. Right. All of a sudden, they might change their opinion and sign it.
But, I mean, would you sign the petition?
For
the peace treaty?
I would. I went to Rome, and the Pope, after 50 years, signed a peace treaty with Germany. And I was there at the Vatican when he did that.
It's amazing.
So everything is possible in this world.
Now, what do you think the legacy of the Korean War veterans and the Korea War are?
Well, I think the legacy of us will last forever if we keep on bringing it up to the kids, because there are so many wars, and this forgotten war, we don't want it to be forgotten.
Forgotten victory.
And there's still a lot of our brothers that have not come back, and I would like to see them come back home. Because imagine, we have had 84,000 missing in action in all the wars, and those families had never seen their loved ones. Now, my loved one came, and we know where he's buried, and we know exactly where, but these people had suffered. I know a man in Laredo that he lost his brother, and he still cries because he would like to see his brother, but God only knows where he is, you know.
What was the impact of the war and your service, like the fighting for your life after you returned home from Korea? Did it impact you in any way after you came
How
home?
did I feel after I came from Korea?
Yes.
We fought under the United Nations. To me, it became more brotherlyhood, you know. Before it was just the United States. But when I went to Korea and we fought under the United Nations, and I saw all those different countries fighting with us, I realized we're all brothers, even the enemy, you know. So from then I have had that feeling. No matter what color, what race, we're from the same planet.
Were you injured in any way or wounded while in Korea?
Thank God, no.
No.
God, the man throws the bullets, and God distributes them to whoever. I was shot many times, but you know, the bullets just went by. The Lord didn't want them to land on me.
Right.
So,
Now, how was your relationship with other foreign troops, including the Korean soldiers?
what is my relation?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that earlier you had said that you really didn't want to know anybody's name, but did you create any, long-lasting friendships? Did you keep in contact with anybody that you were in service with at the time in your unit?
Well, after the war, I met some of my friends that had gone to Korea, and they're all over Laredo and all over the world, and they're my brothers. So, not that I didn't want for them to be my friends, but when one of my friends, Pedro Torres, was going to our place in a convoy of ammo, and the guerrillas blew him up, that really cut me off, because this young boy, when we were in basic training, anybody wanted to fight with us, he would get in front of us, and he said, okay, come and fight with us, with me. And when we went to Korea, I lost that very good friend, Pedro Torres. He was blown up, and we couldn't find him. And in fact, we went to the mountain to look for the guerrillas, but we never found them. And from that, I don't know if it's human or not, for a little while not to be too close to them, because it hurts. It hurts a lot. And then I used to go into the bunker and then come out until the priest came and talked to me that it was them or us. So I don't know. I don't know where I got that thing. But I had some French assigned to me. I had some Turkish from Turkey. I had North Koreans, South Koreans, Mexicans. This was like a laboratory for me, you know, because I saw so many human beings of other race. Because if you live in Laredo, 95% of us are Mexican Americans, you see. So we don't have that contact. But going to Korea, it was like going to the United Nations.
You were saying earlier that y'all would capture prisoners. How many prisoners did you probably have at the most at one time?
The most, maybe 30 in one time.
30.
Another time, maybe 2 or 3. I was sergeant first class, but I decided to be at the gate because twice the Chinese had been over our position, and I didn't want to die while I was asleep. So even though I was a sergeant, I went by the gate. I took 2 or 3 soldiers with me, and I pulled guard all night from 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock until 4 in the morning when they break, because I didn't want my men to be surprised or anybody to be surprised. Because when you're in the trenches and it's very cold and you sit down and you don't move, you start to feel warm, and all of a sudden you go to sleep and freeze to death, you see? And the trenches were left open. So I decided to be in the trenches because, like they say, that's where the paddle hits the ground, you know? That's where the action was. The Chinese would come through the gate. I don't know, maybe, I don't know how many prisoners we got. I never counted them because every patrol would get some. Some will come by themselves. One time we captured, maybe 15 girls, different time. The gate was the way to go to the enemy and the way the enemy would come to us. So it was the main point for me.
Do you feel that it's important for your children and grandchildren and other children to know the significance of the Korean War?
I believe, and in fact, I'm going to tell you, I believe that every young person born in the United States, girl or boy, should serve 12 months in the armed forces or whatever and help the United States. And I believe that every boy and girl should get 2 years of college free. And you're going to say, how are we going to get the money to educate them? Very simple. When they get their degree and start working, then we'll get it with the income tax, you know. So everything they would pay back. The more educated we are, the better this country will be. And I think that's why we're the richest country in the world, because we're better educated. I saw in Korea, we were better educated, we were fighting with peasants or people that were not educated, and we could outwit them, you know. We were not that many, but we could beat thousands. So,
what do you think that with, you're saying you believe that every person, man or woman, should serve at least 12 months. What do you think that would do for them? Like, what would that teach them, or what kind of morals would that?
Okay, when you're in the armed service, you learn to obey. When you're at home, you talk back to your father and your mother. But when you're in the armed service, you learn all the rules and so on, and you become a better person. I believe like the Israel, they have boys and girls, and that little country can defend itself. And it's very rich because they're very industrial. Not being mean to our society, but some of our kids get very lazy. They don't go to school. They don't want to do this and that. And then some of the parents are not too good because they drink or smoke and they go on drugs. And education should start at home. But since there are in some houses no education, then we should educate those.
Do you have any direct messages that you'd like to give to younger generations?
My message that I would tell everybody in the United States, we have a great country. I don't want it to be like Rome and all those, the Aztecs and those civilizations that have died, the Greek. It has lasted many years since George Washington, and I wish it would last forever. And the only way we can last forever is to quit these drugs, to go to school, to respect your parents. And the basic thing is the family. And there are a lot of dysfunctional families in the United States. The basic thing is the family, to love your family. But most of all, I tell you or anybody to take care of number one, which is you. And then you take care of number two, number three, your family. And if something happens, always come back to number one, because you're the one that's going to help them. When you die, you want to leave this country better than when you came in. That's my philosophy. I've enjoyed all my life. I always say in jokes, because you only have one life, and you cannot waste it by being sad or like that. So if you have that life, enjoy it. And also believe that you're not going to be here forever, so do your best. I got that idea from way when the people were going west. One man would go get some wood. He would get a campfire. When he would leave enough wood so the next caravan will come. They will not suffer and go look for wood. And that's the way it is. You have to leave this place better than when you came in. And that's my motto. That's it.